I'd like to call tonight's Board of Commissioners meeting to order. If we could all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. For the roll call, everybody is here. Our engineer, Brian McAdam, is joining us through Zoom, and we have Mark Fisher in for David Bruman as Township Solicitor this evening. There are no agenda modifications this evening. Number 5, announcements and presentations. 5.1, McCungy Ambulance Annual Report. Christopher Greb.
Good evening. Thank you. Greb from McCungy Ambulance Corps. As always, I will do my best to be brief. Not my strong point, however. In 2024, the McCungy Ambulance Corps responded to 4,552 calls for service. The biggest news of this year is that this year, 2025, is our 70th anniversary. Back in 1955, 26 members got together and responded to 50 calls for service. So probably don't need to tell you, but the area has grown a little bit. We continue to think of our organization as 4 divisions. The general and emergency operations, that's what you think of when you think of the ambulance corps going on emergency calls. We have special operations, community outreach and education, and of course, administration, which makes it all happen. Probably the most telling thing in each of those, in the general operations this year, is if you note, we had a significant decrease in call volume. So in 2023, we had 5,165 calls for service, and we dropped nearly 600 over the year. And we spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly why that is. And I can't tell you I know concretely. I will know that we feel pretty confident that having an emergency department in our coverage area, some people have decided to go there instead of calling the ambulance. I know that because when I was teaching a CPR class last year, someone said, yes, my father passed out the other day. We would have called the ambulance, but the hospital was right across the street. So we know that certainly is part of it. Some of the other thoughts we have, maybe a little bit less telling on that or less we're sure of, is that if you were to look at create a line of call volume increase from 2010 to 2020 and continue that line, take out 2020 to 2023, we would be right on that line. 2020 to 2023 is the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So, whether or not clearly the pandemic had an increase on our call volume, whether or not we've now right back to where we would have been, I don't know. The coming months and years will tell. In any case, we continue to provide the service that the community requires. So we keep kind of changing with the world as it happens and go out there and meet their needs. I announced this previously, but our community outreach position was filled in January of last year and for the full year and continuing on with a gentleman by the name of Bill Sames. He's a retired Allentown medic, was there for 24 years. And if you can survive 24 years in Allentown, that's pretty good. Those folks are pretty busy and work pretty hard. He was, for most part of the year, working about 30 hours a week on the ambulance, about 10 hours a week doing CPR training of our people, checking AEDs in the community, working with our other first responders. He's built up enough work for himself, which is what we were hoping for, that now he'll be switching to about half and half. He'll really have about 1 18-hour shift a week on the ambulance, pick up some extras here and there, and then be able to spend the rest of his time really working on those things, which we find very important. We believe the community outreach role is a very important part of anything an ambulance service does. On the sickest patients, if the bystanders aren't providing first aid or if needed CPR, the chance of us having a positive outcome are very, very slim. So we think that's very important. We continue to focus on that. We have the statistics for our community outreach division in the flyer here. However, I will say that as this year's move forward, it's just pretty impressive as the amount of stuff we're able to move that really doesn't show up in numbers. We are coordinating a 3-day training on mental health and drug overdose awareness and prevention for emergency responders here coming up in April. We're bringing in national level speakers. We have people coming from all over Pennsylvania to see this. So we've worked with a bunch of funders and partners to make that happen. And that's really, we can do that because we have this focus on community outreach education. Our special operations division, we continue to work as part of a team in the county. It's been us and one other fire company for the last 2 years. We're happy to say that another fire company, Walnutport, is really in Northampton County, but just barely. So they'll be joining the team here moving forward, which will, again, kind of more spread out the resources that are required on those larger scale incidents. Last year, we responded to 46 of those, anywhere from, I think I said, from Beltsville to Hamburg. If you kind of get that, that's where we generally get called from to assist. And then, of course, you have administration. That's the part that I often come here to talk about, the money and those types of things. I think the most interesting thing on the administration side of the world is this really thick stapled packet that I'm sure all of you spend hours reading. But if you jump to page 4, which there's no page numbers. I wish they would have told me that before I printed it, but hey. No, page 5, the very last page. What happened is 2020, the federal government said, we need to figure out what's going on with ambulance corps. Why are they having such trouble? We're going to require every ambulance corps to report their costs and income to us. The pandemic happened, so it kind of got a little goofed up. There was 4 years. It was supposed to be a quarter of the services per year. That changed a little bit. But in any case, they got the first 2 years worth of data. Across the country, the net loss per ambulance call was $1,050 across half of the ambulance services in the country. And that is all incomes. Now we're talking about anything from New York City to Bob's Ambulance and Acupuncture out in the sticks, right? So many services, work solely off volunteers and really work at a negative all the time. And it's really questionable how they survive. When we look at our data, thankfully, we were $12.76 to the good during that time period. Now, our reporting period actually was after this, so we'll be in the next set of data. But $12.76 is a heck of a lot better than losing $1,000. But if you think about it, that's a pretty tight margin when you're looking at. Now, what's interesting is that this is one of the first studies that ever included things like depreciation and buying new ambulances and stuff. So that's, we're good with that. And the reason we're good with that, the reason we can be positive is because of your support. The support we've had from this township and our other townships in the community, throughout the years. As I always say, 75 to 80% of our income is billing from calls. Another 15% is community donations. And you folks make up everything else just about. And if without that, we wouldn't be able to do all of these other things that we do to serve the community. So the community outreach and all those would just really plummet if we weren't able to keep, I don't know how you'd buy an ambulance, honestly, without you folks at this point. So as you know, we came to you asking for more money last year, and you guys met the bill there, or paid the bill, I guess it would be, or we ordered that ambulance. It will be here in 33 months after we ordered it. So we'll be here in a little bit, but it's ordered. We're continuing to take the money, setting it aside for that when it comes. As soon as that one gets here, we're going to go out and remount another one. Mr. Beitler, remember the remounting process? So we get the new one in so that we have one, and we're going to go and remount one of the old ones as soon as it gets here. We'll actually have it scheduled like within a couple of weeks, because by then, I don't know if you follow us on Facebook, but our Facebook guys thought it was great. Did you see our?
Did not.
Did not. They had a birthday party for our oldest ambulance, which hit 100,000 miles. They gave it a cake. So I'm sitting at home, and my wife called me. I'm like, no, there's no way. Oh my goodness. Listen, they're into it, right? My vehicle maintenance guy is very proud that we can run these ambulances and keep them running as well as they can. So, so that ambulance is 100,000. In 3 years, it'll be 150,000, and it'll be time to get that one remounted. So, other information there are community outreach, CPR stuff for the core group, which is throughout the Lehigh Valley. We trained 1,100 people in that group. And then, of course, the Marcel Fry Memorial Emergency Responder Training Fund, which is a fund that was set up by the loved ones of a young lady who passed away in our coverage area about 5 years ago now. And they donated $10,000 last year to help pay for training our local firefighters, equipping them, and other emergency responders. So with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time, but I'm pretty sure I used it. Answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions from the board?
You
Yes.
gotta give that ambulance a can of ST.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Robert.
What is the answer to the quiz?
They're on the back. They're on the back. The ambulance costs $280,000. We carry about 30 medications on each ambulance. And in 1992, we moved to Lower Macungie Township. We built our current building in 2005, but we moved in 1992 out of Macungie Borough into the annex building, which now that I go over and visit, it's emergency management. So I feel right at home. We go there and say, oh, I remember I started in 98, so we were still there.
Chris, I have really one question. You mentioned it before with the community outreach. How do you know where AEDs are in the community?
So our program is that if we find out about one, by law, when someone gets one, they're supposed to notify local EMS.
Okay.
So we generally find about them that way. There are, I'm going to say 52 right now that we go out and check about quarterly. We stop by, just visit, we bug Denise to get the keys for all the club rooms like that, and make sure they're there, make sure the pads are good, make sure they still turn on. There are some businesses where we do that. There's some communities, clubhouses that we do that. There are others that have their own emergency response teams or nurses that handle them.
Mhm.
And there are probably others out there that we don't know about. I do know that there was a cardiac arrest saved with an AED last year in a church that we did not know about that AED. Probably the person survived. So that's great. I mean, and obviously they were checking it. So that's okay with us. But we generally get notified by people if you buy one. A lot of times they'll send you a little piece of paper that says, you're supposed to notify your local EMS.
Interesting. Okay. Well, on behalf of the board, on behalf of the residents, we thank you for your service, the impeccable service that you provide to our community. People feel safe because they know that they're going to, get an answer when they call for the ambulance. Please pass our thanks on to your members. And we hope that, your numbers go down again so that, less people need the ambulance,
Absolutely.
but we're happy it's there when we do.
Yep. Thank you so very much. We're the only business that tries not to get business. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, moving forward, item 6, hearings and approvals. 6.1, consideration to authorize the township manager to execute all related documents related to the acquisition of the Dan Weber property located at 6300 Lower Macungie Road. Mr. Beidle.
Mr. Fisher is actually going to.
Solicitor Fisher.
Thank you. So we're talking, we've been talking about this property for quite some time. Back in December, the board authorized or approved a resolution to acquire this property either through condemnation or through purchase. Since that time, and actually even before that time, there were discussions with the property owner about the property, negotiating terms, doing some due diligence on the property. What we have now is an agreement that has been prepared, terms negotiated, and before you tonight to authorize the township manager to sign the agreement, which essentially equates to an offer to the seller to purchase us the property at what we have reached as an agreed upon price. The next step would be to send that to the seller for them to execute. After that, the next step will be to have a hearing in front of the board, which we plan to have at the next regular meeting of the board, April 3rd, I believe it is, assuming we get the signed copy back from the seller by that time. That will be a public meeting. The agreement, all its terms would be disclosed to the public at that meeting for any comment, or leading up to that meeting for any comment once we have a fully signed copy. That's the process. We have the hearing. Once the hearing's concluded, we would then proceed to closing shortly thereafter. So this is hard to say step one, given how long we've been negotiating, but step one in the process of finalizing the purchase of, I think it's about 44 acres of property on Lower Macungie Road.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Item 7, public comment on non-agenda topics. Does anybody have any public comment on non-agenda topics? Just come up to the podium, sir, and sign your name and address, and
Mind if I sign after I'm done with my comments?
absolutely.
Anthony Toth, 2449 West Liberty Street, Allentown, PA. I'll be short and brief. I'll preface my comments by saying I was hoping not to be here tonight on such a nice night, but I'm here anyway. I had the opportunity to have a meeting with Vince Trangook, number of weeks ago in reference to the Western Lehigh Services project, the conditional use hearing, and subsequent land development plan. One of the reasons I wanted to meet with him is got some concerns about that project due to the location of where my mother lives on Trexlertown Road in the village of Trexlertown. And I've been following the project very diligently, obviously not diligently enough. I did find out that there was a decision rendered subsequent to the challenge to the conditional use hearing that was done here by the board. And there was some advisory opinions, I believe, by the Planning Commission that were brought to the board. And then the board had a meeting, and then there were some conclusions made. And then there was a challenge to that that ultimately went to Lehigh County Court of Common Pleas. Then there was a decision that was rendered by Judge Cohen. So I'm assuming everything I'm talking about, you're all aware of, correct? I did make an attempt to contact Mr. Bytel by telephone a few times last week. I never got a call back, and I also tried to attempt to contact the solicitor just to get an understanding of the practical implications of what this finding was and the judge's order. So in brief, was this order accepted in full? Did the board want to challenge this? Did they find anything interesting about the order? Solicitor find anything interesting about the order given the nature? I read it thoroughly, and I'm a member of the City of Allentown Planning Commission for 17 years. I was the vice chair for about 5, so I have a general understanding of how planning works. And I just wanted to get a brief understanding of what happened after this order was rendered and what the board thought and what the solicitor thought. So,
Well, first of all, this is public comment, not public discussion.
okay.
Secondly, as you have in your hand, this is part of litigation, so we're not free to comment on that at this point. Once everything is rendered out and final decision is made, that will be made available to the public. But this is currently still in litigation, and that's pretty much all I can say about it.
Okay, so reading between the lines, and if it's still in litigation, I am assuming the board is challenging this order.
You can assume what you want. All I can tell you is we're not free to comment on pending litigation.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on non-agenda topics? Okay, moving forward, item 8, communication. Mr. Bytel.
Thank you. We have 2 items this evening. Mr. Matthew Guglielmello, Charles Court, statement of interest for the Audit Advisory Committee. And then Martine Miniger, Planning Commission member, a letter of resignation.
Thank you. Can we please accept Martine Miniger's resignation? Do I have a motion?
Move to accept with regrets.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the application for audit advisory will come to the workshop, I'm assuming, at some point?
It'll work through the process for that. Yes.
Very good. Item 9, there are no appointments to various boards, committees, and commissions. Item 10, approval of minutes from previous meetings, 10.1, March 6th, 2025.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 11, approval of transfers, bill list, and payroll. Mr. Bytel.
Thank you. We have the following for your consideration. The general fund, $143,527.85. The Solid Waste Fund, $13,776.56. The Sewer Fund, $364.15. The Capital Projects Fund, $283,926.39. The Open Space Fund, $12,986.25. The Liquid Fuels Fund, $22,449.17. The payroll, $162,561.76. The developer escrow, $55,050.39. For a total of all funds, $694,642.52.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? As always, for our viewing public, our bill list can be found on our website at lowermac.com. Item 12, departmental matters, engineering, Mr. McAdam.
I have nothing to report tonight, Mr. President.
Okay, any questions for the engineer? 12.2, planning, Mr. Tranguch.
Nothing to report tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tranguch? Item 12.3, solicitor, Solicitor Fisher.
I also have nothing to report. Thank you.
Sufficient. Any questions for the solicitor? And finally, let's not break the streak, 12.4, township manager, Mr. Beidle.
Unfortunately, I have to break the streak. Ms. Flexer has
Of course.
notified me, just a reminder, the planning commission position, the application deadline is May 6th, interviews May 19th, with a potential appointment consideration June 5th.
Okay.
That's all I have unless there's questions.
Any questions for the manager? Yes,
Get a couple. I
Commissioner Beitler.
was just asking about the shed update, but Lee, that's on the schedule for the workshop. About
We do. There'll be a lengthy workshop agenda actually this Monday coming up. So
that's on the schedule.
it is for some updates.
I seen you update and gave us the information on the new bidding limits.
I did. And
So that, I was accurate saying we can't piecemeal that project. We have to get the whole building planned out, engineered for electric, and that, sure it'll be over that lower limit. Quote.
Actually, we have 3 quotes over the lower limit, and we are below the threshold for more extensive bidding on that project.
So that's great. Be the whole building.
Yes, there's a scope of work like we talked about for, lights, interior lights, garage door opener, just for the board. And I'll try to grab some pictures next time I'm out there. That building is a shell building, so there are no walls. We have to insulate and at some point figure out what kind of wall install we're going to do there. So of course, there may be some additional electrical work at some point in the future, but not until we're kind of get the concept or close that building and make it a little bit tighter. We do have in those quotes various electrical outlets throughout, but of course we may, at some point have to make an addition.
And the last item, the Kratzer Farm, that'll be at workshop also talked about.
It is, and we've met as a staff again since the last meeting, and we'll have I think a fairly good progress report for the board at the workshop.
And if you could, before we put widen the driveway and the parking in, I'm not sure, can you check for us? I believe there's a lateral coming into that property, sewer lateral, and we would not want to bury it if we're gonna put a future bathroom in.
I will check. That is a good point. I will make sure that we review that prior to Monday for the meeting.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Beidle? Okay, item 13.1, old business. Is there any old business to discuss this evening? 13.2, new business. 13.2.1, consideration of policy for Board of Commissioners committees. As the board is aware, we, as a township for a number of years, had Board of Commissioner committees, 5 of them, 2 commissioners assigned to each one that met on separate days. Since the start of the pandemic, we've moved to a workshop system, which I think works efficiently. It gets all the members in the room at the same time and able to hear updates, and allows for our business meetings to be where business is conducted, where we do more of the deliberation and understanding at the workshop. So this is a consideration to remove the commissioner committees from our township policy.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any commissioner comments or questions?
Just one comment.
Commissioner Beitler.
This did save time because instead of the committees and then coming back and reporting it and having additional conversations on it. So it was a good move. We just didn't realize we had a dog department.
Yeah.
We are making the government more efficient.
We're trying, for sure. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 14, Board of Commissioner reports. The next board workshop will be this coming Monday, March 24th, 2025 at 6 p.m. 14.2, the next regular board meeting is April 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. There will not be an executive session following this meeting. With that, we are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Brian.
See you Monday.